How did China lose its money? How did losing that money cost it its power? And how did it reach a point where it could rebalance the world with that very same money? A financial story from an empire to a global power. By the late 18th century, China was one of the largest and wealthiest empires in the world. During the Qing dynasty, China was not only dominant in terms of population, but could also be considered the center of the world in production, trade, and technology. Thanks especially to the accumulated knowledge inherited from the Ming period, China was by far the strongest economy in Asia. But the world was changing. By the 19th century, the West had completed the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines, factories, mass production. Europe was now producing faster and wanted to sell much more. China, however, was thinking differently. "We are sufficient unto ourselves," it said. It was closed to foreign trade. It did not need imported goods. And this is exactly where the fracture occurred. As silver flowed, the balance collapsed. Britain was buying tea, silk, and porcelain from China. But China did not want European goods in return. It wanted only one thing: silver. This situation completely disrupted Britain's trade system. As silver flowed toward China, Britain began to grow poorer. And the British found a solution. They decided to bring opium, produced in India, into China. At first this was tolerated, but in a short time China's economy began to collapse, and the health of the population started to deteriorate. Levels of addiction increased, productivity declined, and state revenues began to fall. When China decided to ban opium, the Opium Wars began in 1839. These wars were not truly won by weapons, but by trade. China could no longer resist. With the Treaty of Nanking signed in 1842, it ceded Hong Kong to Britain and opened its ports. In the Second Opium War in 1856, China was once again defeated by Britain and France. Through these treaties, foreigners were allowed to trade freely on Chinese soil. They were able to purchase land. They were allowed to enter the interior regions. And most importantly, opium imports were legalized. China effectively became a semi-colony. A state that lost its money, lost its legitimacy. By the late 19th century, China had become a country that had lost its sovereignty, was heavily indebted, was forced to pay reparations, and whose economy had become dependent on foreign powers. In this environment, the Boxer Rebellion erupted, but a coalition formed by 8 nations occupied Beijing. The outcome did not change: more debt and more concessions. By the early 1900s, the Chinese dynasty was already finished in the eyes of its own people. In 1911, a revolution led by Sun Yat-sen took place. 2,000 years of imperial rule came to an end. The Republic of China was established. But this new order also failed to bring economic stability. Chaos, war, and a collapsing economy. Sun Yat-sen's 3 principles of the people were promising. But after his death, the country fell into the hands of warlords. Each region was maintaining and expanding its own army and spending its own currency. The collapse of a centralized economy became inevitable. In 1928, Chiang Kai-shek managed to unify the country in some form. But this time a civil war broke out. Nationalists and communists confronted each other. On top of that, the Japanese invasion was added. Between 1937 and 1945, China experienced one of the greatest destructions in its modern history. Approximately 20 million people were killed. Agriculture collapsed. Industry came to a halt. Industry, Mayo, and the state-controlled economy. In 1949, Mao Zedong proclaimed the People's Republic of China. The new regime placed the economy entirely under state control. Land reforms were carried out. Landlords were executed. Industry was expanded with Soviet support. But unplanned collectivization brought a great disaster. During the famine of the 1960s, nearly 30 million people lost their lives. The Cultural Revolution, meanwhile, completely paralyzed the economy. Education came to a halt. Science fell silent. The country became isolated. Deng Xiaoping and the real transformation. In 1978, Deng Xiaoping stepped onto the stage, and he uttered the sentence that would change China's destiny. It does not matter whether the cat is black or white. What matters is whether it catches mice. Communism would be preserved, but making money would be allowed. Agriculture was liberalized. Special economic zones were established. Foreign capital was invited. Shenzhen became the exact symbol of this transformation. It turned from a fishing village into a technology hub. China opens to the world. In 2001, China gained membership in the World Trade Organization. This was a turning point. China now began to flood the world with a model based on cheap labor, a massive domestic market, state-supported production, export-oriented growth. During the 2008 financial crisis, while the West was on the brink of collapse, China remained standing. Its foreign exchange reserves exceeded $2 trillion. It became the largest creditor of the United States. Today, a planned superpower. With the era of Xi Jinping, China has become not just a power that produces, but one that seeks to lead. Semiconductors, artificial intelligence, electric vehicles, 5G military technology. All of them are part of a state plan. Today, China is the world's second largest economy, the largest industrial power, the country with the largest navy. But at the same time, it is also under strict control, marked by human rights violations, defined by rising tensions over Taiwan, making it a global risk. China's story shows one thing clearly. China today is no longer just producing, it is planning. And the outcome of that plan will shape not only China, but the global balance itself. This is not a story of freedom. It is a story of patience, discipline, and financial planning. And this story is not over yet.